The clock ticked past 2 a.m. as Robert shifted in bed again, his third trip to the bathroom in just an hour. His legs felt heavy, his bladder never fully empty. The doctor's words echoed. "Beepsh normal at your age." Normal? He clenched his fists. This wasn't living. Across town, Dr. Ellis scrolled through patient files, her screen glowing in the dark. One case stood out. A 70-year-old marathon runner with no prostate issues. Her fingers paused. Why him and not the others? Robert's phone buzzed, a news headline. Prostate specialist warns seniors. This habit enlarges the prostate. He clicked. The article vanished, replaced by a single line. Meet the doctor who's reversing BPH, if you dare. A knock rattled his door. Robert hesitated before yanking the door open, half expecting another salesman or a neighbor complaining about his late-night pacing. But the woman standing there wore a lab coat over jeans, her sharp eyes scanning him like she already knew his struggles. "Dr. Ellis," she said, holding up a badge that flashed too quickly to read. "We need to talk about your prostate, and why your doctor's wrong." Before he could protest, she stepped inside, dropping a folder on his cluttered coffee table. Inside were medical reports, but not his, pages of men in their 60s and 70s with prostate issues far worse than his. Yet all of them had one thing in common. They'd reversed their symptoms without surgery or pills. Robert's hands trembled as he flipped through the files. "How?" he demanded. Dr. Ellis smirked. "They fix what's really causing it. And if you follow what I say, you'll be pissing like a teenager again in 6 weeks." Robert scoffed. "Bullshit. You're telling me all I need is some magic exercise." She leaned in, her voice dropping. "No magic. Just science your doctors ignore. See, your prostate isn't the problem. It's your nervous system." She tapped his chest. "Every time you stress, your body clenches, your blood flow chokes, and guess what? Gets squeezed like a sponge? Your prostate." But the men in those files, they rewired their stress response. "And you're next." Robert's pulse pounded. Sounded insane, but what if it wasn't? Across town, the marathon runner from Dr. Ellis' files sat cross-legged on a yoga mat, breathing slowly as his therapist guided him through a visualization. Imagine the tension melting from your pelvis, like warm water unknotting a rope. His medical chart lay nearby, stamped in bold, BPH resolved. Robert stared at Dr. Ellis, his mind racing. Could it really be that simple? Just stress? He thought back to the last decade. The layoffs at work, his divorce, the sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, dreading another day of fatigue and endless bathroom trips. His jaw clenched. "So you're telling me my prostate's a damn stress balloon?" Dr. Ellis didn't blink. "Worse. It's a stress sponge, and yours is soaked." She pulled out her phone, showing him a live graph from a study. Every time Robert had thought about his ex-wife earlier that evening, his pelvic muscle activity spiked violently red. Your body's stuck in fight or flight, crushing your prostate 24/7 without you even noticing. But here's the good news. She swiped to another chart, the marathon runner's data. Over 6 weeks, his muscle tension flatlined from jagged peaks to calm waves. He didn't change his diet or pop more pills. He hacked his nervous system. Robert's throat went dry as she played an audio clip of the runner describing his first pain-free morning in years. Waking up actually rested. No urgent bathroom dash. A memory flashed. His own father, wheelchair-bound after prostate surgery, muttering getting old's hell. Something hot rose in Robert's chest. What's the catch? Dr. Ellis pocketed her phone. You'll hate the first week. Your brain's wired to panic, we're rewiring that. Tomorrow you'll start with the ice and fire drill. She tossed him a cheap kitchen timer. When this goes off, you'll stop dead. No matter where you are, and do the 30-second reset. No excuses. Robert turned the timer over in his hands, the plastic suddenly heavy with possibility. Meanwhile, across the city, a urology resident sneaked into the hospital records room after hours, pulling files marked Ellis Research Classified. The pages glowed under his flashlight, revealing shocking before/after scans of shrunken prostate tissue, and a handwritten note. If Big Pharma finds out we're curing BPH without drugs, this disappears. The kitchen timer's first alarm blared the next morning while Robert was mid-shave, sending his razor skidding across his cheek. He froze, staring at his bleeding reflection as Dr. Ellis' words echoed. No excuses. Gritting his teeth, he planted his feet and sucked in a sharp breath through his nose, hands instinctively curling into fists. "Now exhale like you're fogging a mirror," she'd instructed. But all that came out was a shaky puff of air. His heart hammered. This felt ridiculous. Then the tingling started. A strange warmth spread from his chest down to his pelvis, like hot syrup pouring into frozen pipes. For the first time in years, he became aware of the constant tension in his groin, a vice grip he'd normalized. The timer beeped. Robert gasped, doubling over as a cramp twisted through his abdomen, proof his body was fighting the release. That night, he lay in bed tracking his bladder urges like a detective, noticing how they spiked whenever memories of his failed business surfaced. Down the hall, his neglected treadmill gathered dust under a pile of medical bills. Meanwhile, the rogue urology resident Mark squinted at Ellis' stolen files in his dim apartment, pausing on a shocking photo. A 72-year-old patient's before/after ultrasound showing a 40% prostate reduction. His hands shook as he dialed a number. "You were right," Mark whispered. "They're suppressing a cure." The voice on the line hissed back. "Get me those breathing exercise tapes. We'll expose this on the podcast." Back at the hospital, Dr. Ellis stared at her emptied research cabinet. A single sticky note left behind. "You're being watched." She smirked, tucking a flash drive into her bra. The real data was already saved. By the third day, Robert's timer drills had become a bizarre ritual, freezing in line at the grocery store, mid-conversation with his neighbor, even once during a tense work call. Each time the same pattern. Resistance, then that strange warmth pooling low in his belly, followed by waves of discomfort as decades of clenched muscles finally unspooled. But something unexpected happened on the fourth morning. He woke up without the usual desperate urge to run to the bathroom. For a full minute he just lay there waiting for the familiar pressure. But it never came. His hands shook as he stood over the toilet, actually able to empty his bladder completely for the first time in years. When he called Dr. Ellis, she didn't sound surprised. "Your nervous system's finally remembering how to rest," she said. "But don't celebrate yet. Tomorrow we add the trauma release drills." Robert's celebration died when she described the next step: revisiting his most stressful memories while consciously relaxing his pelvic floor. That afternoon, as he hesitantly recalled his divorce papers arriving, he suddenly felt a searing pain shoot through his groin, proof his body had been storing that trauma physically. Meanwhile, Mark's investigation took a dangerous turn when he broke into the hospital's restricted archives, discovering a chilling pattern. Every urologist who'd replicated Ellis' research had either retired abruptly or been discredited. As he photographed a memo about protecting prostate medication profits, a shadow moved in the corridor. The last thing Mark saw was a syringe glinting in the dim light before everything went black. At the same time, Ellis received a text from an unknown number. "They took your resident. Next is you and your patients." She immediately packed her files, but not before mailing a package to Robert containing a single USB drive labeled "Play Me When It Happens." Robert stared at the unmarked USB drive, his fingers tapping nervously against the kitchen counter. The cryptic message, "Play me when it happens," gnawed at him. What was supposed to happen? His phone buzzed with a notification. A breaking news alert about a missing hospital resident. The grainy photo made his blood run cold. It was the same young doctor he'd seen briefly in Ellis' files. Suddenly, the USB felt heavier in his palm. He jammed it into his laptop, half expecting some grand revelation, but found only a single audio file labeled Protocol X. Ellis' voice crackled through the speakers. "If you're hearing this, they've made their move. What comes next will feel impossible, but remember, your body knows the truth even when your mind refuses to see it." The recording detailed an emergency breathing technique. 4 sharp inhales through the nose followed by a growling exhale, designed to short-circuit stress responses. Robert practiced it awkwardly, nearly choking on the 4th breath, when his doorbell rang. A deliveryman handed him a package with no return address. Inside lay a stack of medical journals with certain passages highlighted, all documenting the link between repressed trauma and prostate inflammation. One margin note in Ellis' handwriting stopped him cold. "Your father's surgery wasn't necessary." They knew. The room spun as childhood memories surfaced, his father wincing in pain after the operation, the way doctors had brushed off his complications as normal. Robert's hands trembled as he reached for his phone to call Ellis, but her number was disconnected. Across town, a black SUV idled outside an abandoned warehouse where Mark groggily woke to the sound of a voice recorder playing his own terrified screams. Being edited into what sounded like a psychiatric breakdown confession. A shadowy figure dropped a newspaper beside him, the headline screaming, "Disgraced Dr. Ellis accused of medical fraud, patients warned." Mark's bloodied fingers scrabbled at the paper, spotting Robert's name circled in red under next targets. Robert's hands shook as he tore through Ellis' research, the pieces finally clicking. His father's unnecessary surgery, his own years of suffering, the missing doctors. The USB's emergency breathing technique pulsed in his mind. When the black SUV screeched to a halt outside his house, he didn't panic. Instead, he took 4 sharp inhales, his exhale a guttural roar as he flung open the door. Not to fight, but to stand completely relaxed, pelvis loose, staring down the men in suits. Their confusion was instant. No clenched fists, no tense jaw, just a man radiating eerie calm. "Tell your bosses they lost," Robert said, tossing them Mark's edited confession files Ellis had mailed him. "The truth's already online." As they scrambled, news alerts exploded. The marathon runner's testimony going viral, the suppressed research leaked worldwide. In the chaos, Ellis emerged from hiding, leading a class action lawsuit that toppled the pharmaceutical cover-up. Months later, Robert stood at his father's grave, no longer wincing from prostate pain. "They kept us scared," he whispered, placing a printout of the now public cure, simple mind-body techniques, against the headstone. The wind carried it away like a pardon. Moral lesson: the body never lies. What we bury in our minds festers in our flesh, but the deepest healing begins when we dare to face what's been clenched, both physically and emotionally. True health can't be bottled or bought. It's reclaimed breath by breath.